me say to all the men and women of Oklahoma, thank you for sending to Congress a rock-ribbed conservative like Jim Bridenstine. He's a Top Gun fighter pilot, so he's way cooler than I could ever hope to be. But I'll tell you this, when you're in a foxhole in Washington, D.C. with incoming from all sides, you get a measure of a man's character. And I'm going to tell you, Jim Bridenstine has a cast iron backbone, and he fights for the men and women of Oklahoma. So last Thursday in Cleveland, we had kind of a quiet evening. What an amazing array of talent we had on that debate stage. How fantastic is it that we have so many young, dynamic, inspirational leaders stepping forward to lead the Republican Party and to lead the nation. And what a contrast with the Democrats. I'm pretty sure the first Democratic debate will consist of Hillary. I have to say, I am so honored, I am so humbled to be with so many incredible patriots gathered here tonight. We're here because America's in crisis. We're here because we're bankrupting our kids and grandkids. We're here because our constitutional rights are under assault each and every day from Washington. And we're here because America has receded from leadership in the world, and it has made the world a much more dangerous place. And yet I'm here tonight with a word of hope and encouragement, exhortation and optimism all across Oklahoma, all across this country. Americans are waking up. And let me tell you, help is on the way. So I want everyone here to look forward. Look forward to January 2017. If I'm elected president, let me tell you what I intend to do on my first day in office. The first thing I intend to do in office is rescind every single illegal and unconstitutional executive action. You know, President Obama likes to say, he's got a phone and he's got a pen. Well, you live by the pen, you die by the pen. And my pen has an eraser. But sadly, the corruption of this administration has not been limited to the White House. It has pervaded the entire federal government. And this Department of Justice is the most partisan and lawless Department of Justice we have ever seen. The second thing I intend to do on my first day in office is instruct the United States Department of Justice to open an investigation into Planned Parenthood. And to prosecute any and all criminal violations by that organization. The administration of justice should be fair and impartial and blind to party or ideology. The fidelity of the Department of Justice should be to the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America. Yeah. And we are going to restore integrity to the United States Department of Justice. The third thing I intend to do on the first day is instruct the Department of Justice and the IRS and every other branch of the federal government that the persecution of religious liberty ends today. That every serviceman and woman has the right to pray and worship God, and their commanding officer has nothing to say about it. That means that the Little Sisters of the Poor, a Catholic charity of nuns who take in vows of poverty, who care for the poor and elderly, and right now the Obama administration is litigating against them. Trying to impose millions of dollars of fines under Obamacare on the sisters in order to try to force the nuns to pay for abortion-inducing drugs and others. Now let me give you all a real simple rule of thumb. If you're litigating against nuns, you've probably done something wrong. In January 2017, instead of receiving a legal summons from the Obama Justice Department, the Little Sisters of the Poor will receive in the mail notification that the case against them has been dismissed. And along with it, an invitation for the sisters to come to the White House and tell their story to the world. The fourth thing I intend to do on the first day in office is rip to shreds this catastrophic Iranian nuclear deal. security threat facing America is the threat of a nuclear America. Several weeks ago, I observed that if this deal goes through, the Obama administration would become the world's leading financier of radical Islamic terrorism. Now, in response to that, President Obama got very upset. I do so hate to dismay him. He took time from his busy travel abroad, in between the 8th and 9th holes, to attack me directly. And he said my saying that was ridiculous, that it was over the top, that the rhetoric was too much. You can't say that, he said. Now, sadly, it wasn't just President Obama. It was Republicans as well. Mitt Romney tweeted to the world, "Cruz has gone over the line. That rhetoric is too much. Don't say that about this Iranian deal." Likewise, Jeb Bush said, now, don't use language like that. That might upset people. Let me give you a very simple principle. Truth is not rhetoric. And you know, in the entire course of his attack, President Obama didn't actually attempt to refute the substance of what I said. So let's review the facts. Fact number one, Iran is today the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism. Fact number two, if this deal goes through, over $100 billion will flow directly into Iran. Fact number three, if that happens, billions of those dollars will go directly to Hamas, to Hezbollah, to the Houthis, to radical Islamic terrorists across the globe. And those jihadists will use those billions to murder Americans, to murder Israelis, to murder Europeans. If President Obama doesn't like the rhetoric of his administration becoming the world's leading financier of radical Islamic terrorism, there is an easy solution. Stop financing radical Islamic terrorism! Fifth thing I intend to do on the first day in office is begin the process of moving America's embassy in Israel to Jerusalem, the once and eternal capital of Israel. Now, you know, a lot of presidential candidates, both Democrat and Republican, have made that exact same promise. And yet something happens when they get to the White House. Inevitably, their teams come in and they say, well, you know, if you do that, it'll make other folks in the Middle East really unhappy. If you hadn't noticed, they're already pretty unhappy. The single biggest difference between me and the other fine gentlemen on that stage in Cleveland is that when I tell you I will do something, I'm going to do exactly what I said. That's day one. There are 365 days a year. 4 years in a presidential term. And 4 more years in your second term. By the end of 8 years, there are going to be a whole lot of newspaper reporters and editors and journalists who've checked themselves into therapy. In the days that follow, I will go to Congress, and we will repeal every word of Obamacare. In the days that follow, I will instruct the Federal Department of Education. I will instruct the Federal Department of Education that Common Core ends today! In the days that follow, we will rebuild our military. We will honor the commitments made to our soldiers and sailors and airmen and Marines. And we will allow our servicemen and women to exercise their constitutional right to keep and bear arms and defend themselves. The next time a jihadist shows up in Chattanooga, Tennessee, he's going to discover the business end of the firearm of a dozen Marines. In the days that follow, we will rein in the out-of-control regulators at the EPA that are strangling small businesses and jobs. In the days that follow, we will finally secure the border and end sanctuary cities. And we will stop the Obama administration's indefensible practice of releasing to the public violent, criminal, illegal aliens. And in the days that follow, I will go to Congress, and we will pass fundamental tax reform, adopting a simple flat tax. So that every American can fill out his or her taxes on a postcard. And when we do that, we should abolish the IRS. There are about 90,000 employees at the IRS. We need to padlock that building. Take all 90,000 and put them on our southern border. Now, to our friends in the media, I say that somewhat tongue-in-cheek. But if you think about it, imagine you traveled thousands of miles in the blazing sun. You're swimming the Rio Grande. The first thing you see is 90,000 IRS agents. You turn around and go home too. Now, some of y'all may be thinking, all of this makes sense to me. Basic common sense. Live within your means. Don't bankrupt your kids and grandkids. Follow the Constitution. But can it happen? Can it be done? You know, Scripture tells us there's nothing new under the sun. Where we are today is very, very much like the late 1970s. Same failed domestic policies. Same misery, stagnation, and malaise. Same feckless and naive foreign policies. In fact, the exact same countries, Russia and Iran, openly laughing at and mocking the President of the United States. Now, why is it that analogy gives me so much hope and optimism? Because we know how that story ended. Millions of men and women across this country came together from the grassroots, rose up, and became the Reagan Revolution. It didn't come from Washington. Washington despised Ronald Reagan. By the way, if you see a candidate who Washington embraces, run and hide. It came from the American people, and it turned this country around. We went from stagnation and misery and malaise to booming economic growth, millions lifted from poverty to prosperity in the American dream. We went from our hostages languishing in Iran to winning the Cold War and tearing the Berlin Wall to the ground. The reason I'm so optimistic is the same thing is happening today. All across Oklahoma, all across this nation, Americans are waking up. The reason I'm optimistic is because the fire marshal forced us to turn hundreds of people away tonight. Something incredible is happening. You know, when we launched this campaign on March 23rd at Liberty University, the New York Times promptly opined, Cruz cannot win, because the Washington elites despise him. That was the whole point of the campaign. Listen, if you think things in Washington are going great, if you think we're headed in the right direction, we just need someone to fiddle around the edges, then I ain't the guy. If, on the other hand, you think Washington's fundamentally broken, if you think there is a bipartisan corruption with career politicians in both parties who get in bed with the lobbyists and special interests, and we need to bring power out of Washington and back to we the people. That is what this campaign is all about. Well, the Times went on. They said, okay, maybe the grassroots are going to be with Cruz. But he ain't going to have any money. Because all of the Washington elites, they control all the money. And the lobbyists are all with other candidates who aren't going to rock the boat, who are going to keep that gravy train flowing. Well, you know, a couple of weeks ago, all the presidential candidates filed their fundraising reports. Out of 17 Republican candidates, do you know which campaign raised the most hard money for the campaign? We did! In just over 3 months together, we raised $14.3 million. That came from over 175,000 contributions. In all 50 states, people all over the country going to TedCruz.org. 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 It's TedCruz.org. The average contribution was $68. That is the power of the grassroots. So the two things I want to do wrapping up. The first is I want to make 3 requests of everyone here. Jim told you about how Oklahoma is going to play a critical role in the Republican primary state. Oklahoma's election, the primary, is going to be on March 1st. We're going to go through Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, critically important states. We are all in those 3 states. We've got fantastic teams on the ground, enormous energy in Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina. But then, 10 days later, boom, it's Super Tuesday. And it's going to be primaries all across the South. What they're calling the SEC primary. Although it should be the Big 12 primary. And let me tell you what Oklahoma and Texas and the rest of the South are going to do together. Listen, Oklahoma and Texas, we agree on just about everything. Except football. But Oklahoma and Texas and the rest of the South, together, we are going to ensure that the Republican nominee and the next president is a real and genuine conservative. And that's the only way we win. Every time we nominate Democrat light, we lose. So we are building a grassroots army across Oklahoma and all across the country. We have here in this state an incredible leadership team. Principled, respected conservatives on the ground who've earned the trust by fighting in the trenches. First thing I want to ask of every one of you here is join us. Join us and volunteer to help lead. Take a leadership role in your county. Take a leadership role in your precinct. Reach out to others. The men and women in this auditorium standing together are a formidable force. That's the first thing I would ask. The second thing I would ask of everyone here. When you get home tonight, go to our website, TedCruz.org, and contribute. Now listen, some of you here in this auditorium have the capacity to max out. If you can do that, God love you. We need the resources, and I give you my word, every penny will be spent communicating a strong, positive, optimistic, hopeful, conservative message all across the country. But everyone here can contribute something. You can give $10, or $25, or $50. Even if you're in high school, you can give $10, skip a pizza this week. And let me tell you why that's so important. Because if you do that, then you've got skin in the game. Then you're invested. It's not my campaign, it's our campaign. The third thing I would ask of each and every one of you is that we pray. I would ask that you pray for me and my family, and you pray for our nation. That Americans continue waking up, that we stand together to turn this nation around. The last thing I want to say is this. For all of us, freedom It's not some abstract idea we read about in textbooks. Freedom is real. It's personal. It's in our families. When I think about it, I think of my wife Heidi and our two little girls, Caroline and Catherine. They're 7 and 4. And I ask myself, what kind of world are our girls inheriting? Our parents and grandparents, they gave us an America where the future was brighter, where there was more freedom, more opportunity, more prosperity ahead. Every one of us is here because we're committed to doing the same for our children and our grandchildren. When I think about it, I think about my father, Cruz. My dad is from Cuba. He was born in Cuba, he grew up in Cuba. As a kid, my dad fought the Cuban Revolution. And he was imprisoned and tortured as a teenager. Batista's army beat my dad halfway to death. My father fled Cuba in 1957. He came to America. He couldn't speak a word of English. He had nothing. Had $100 sewn into his underwear. His first job was washing dishes. Made 50 cents an hour. And he worked 7 days a week. He paid his way through school. And he went on with my mom to start a small business in the oil and gas business. Today, my father is a pastor. He travels the country preaching the gospel. Amen. When I was a kid, my dad used to say to me over and over again, when we faced oppression in Cuba, I had a place to flee to. If we lose our freedom here, where do we go? That is why all of us are here. We are here because we are not prepared to go quietly into the night. Because we will not give up on our children and grandchildren. Because we will not surrender freedom and we will not give up the Constitution to anybody. We are here because together we will come together and restore that shining city on a hill that is the United States of America. Thank you and God bless you.
Could I ask you to please be seated? The Tulsa Praise Orchestra is going to play one more song so we can conclude things.